All right, it's time to do part 2 of my traditional knives collection. And as usual, before I get into that, I'm going to show you guys what I'm carrying today. And it is my Crewwear Spyderco Paramilitary 3. This knife, I haven't carried it a ton, but it's a little bit small. Still like it, still gonna keep it, still gonna carry it. But what surprised me is just the action on this knife. I have not lubed this knife. I have not adjusted the knife. I have not done anything but take it out of the box and carry it. It even came tip up carry. So I guess Spyderco is listening to its customers and seeing how they carry their knives as well. So great knife, like it a lot. Now let's roll the intro. Okay, here's the second box of my traditional knife collection. In this box, I have the medium to large size knives. And I said I was going to look through these knives before I did this video. And I mentioned that in my last video. I didn't, so I'm going to wing it again. I'm sure just like the first video, I'll forget some patterns or names or the exact SFO, and I guess that's just part of it. So you can see here, I've got them arranged from medium all the way over here to large. I'm going to pull the box off to the side and go through them one by one. The first pattern that I'm going to show you guys is the GEC 13, and this specific knife is the American whittler pattern, and it is in Jigbone ebony. I believe it's Jigbone ebony. It might be African blackwood. I can't remember. You can see here polished blades, true Splitback whittler. 2 pin blades. Apparently the reason why they use 2 pin blades is because traditionally this is how they came with the 2 pin blades. Big, wide, Wharncliffe blade. I like this knife. I think that the blades could stand to be satined, but I do like the blackwood and the blackwood or ebony, whichever it is, and I do like this shield, which again is a very unique shield you don't see a lot on GEC knives. The second knife is the same exact pattern, same exact knife, just in a different cover material. And this is muslin micarta. I usually carry this knife more than I carry the African blackwood or ebony, or like I said, whatever it is. So these knives have been sharpened. I have carried this knife. I know sometimes I get a couple of questions about patina and everything. I pretty much work in an office, and that's where I carry my traditional knives. So I cut a lot of paper, open a lot of reams of paper, envelopes, things like that. So things that don't cause a lot of patina or scratch up knives. That's why they don't have a lot of patina on them. Speaking of office, this is a knife that my buddy Palaman 2110 here on YouTube and on Instagram, he was kind enough to hook me up with. I missed these when they came out, but he was kind enough to trade with me. I traded my 77 Barlow in natural linen micarta. I think it was natural linen micarta. I kind of missed that knife, but by the same token, this is a great knife that you don't see a lot. This is also a 13. This, oh, and I'm sorry, sheep's foot blade, Wharncliffe blade. So this has a very long Wharncliffe blade. And then on the other side, I like this little detail, this little recessed area, and there's a pin blade here. So smooth white bone. If you've seen my collection pictures, you know that I'm a fan of smooth white bone. I actually just picked up a Beer Scout in smooth white bone that I should have pulled out for this video, but I didn't. So those are my 13s. Those are the first of the medium knives. I'm just gonna put them over here to the side. And my next pattern up is going to be the 77 Barlow. Unfortunately, this is the only 77 Barlow that I have at the moment. I've had lots of them. I've sold them. I've traded them, as I mentioned, with my 13 over there. This one here is, and this is when I'm going to forget the cover material. This is antique autumn saw cut bone. I could be wrong, but it's saw cut bone, matte strike pull. This was from last year's Mike Latham of Collector Knives, his SFO. You can see my larger knives I tend to use to cut steak and meat and things like that when I'm at home. So this one I like a lot. This one, as I said, was from last year, so it's the 2016 SFO from Mike Latham. I love the way they snap shut. Just a great knife. And actually, you know what? This should be in my other box. My 77s were in the other box. This is the only 77 Barlow, clip point Barlow that I have. But I do have two other I have one Barlow knife and one what I've been told is an English jack, but it's a jack knife. So this is a great knife. I like it a lot. Used it a good bit. Up next, 74 pattern. This is Rob Bixby's one of the two first SFOs that he did with Great Eastern Cutlery. This is Autumn Gold Jig Bone, I believe. Pinch corset shield, slim corset shield, polished blade, clip point, a Lanny's clip type knife. Very nice knife. Again, this one came out earlier in this year. Not as good well, let me rephrase that. Great walk and talk, but the spring in this is not quite as stiff as in the 77. Now, I really like how tight that spring is and how snappy it is. Great knife. This is a little bit larger than the 77, if you can see that there, but they're not overly big. My second knife up is the 74 in Yellow Rose, and I do have one of the Yellow Rose 35s coming. This knife, the pivot is a little bit tighter, but I don't think that the spring is as tight. Great knife. Again, same exact knife as this, just a different cover material. Not really much else to say. Clip point, polished blade, Northfield trim, line bolster. Up next is going to be this knife here. And this knife here, this is kind of an interesting knife. I actually picked this up with my Smooth White Bone Beer Scout. I had it up for sale. A couple of guys started asking me about the steel, and I told them I didn't know. Well, Tattooed Fat Dude, he actually was the one who told me, after asking me if it was, he told me that it was, let's see if I can get that in the picture. He told me it was 01 tool steel, which you can see right there. So I've never had an 01 tool steel GEC. I'm going to hold on to this one. This one has been used. You can see the patina. It's been sharpened. It's very, very sharp. That was one of the things I tested. I fleshed out the pivot. It was absolutely filthy, but now it's got great walk and talk. You can pinch it open. That's why I like these 71 bull noses. These are just great work knives. If you're somebody looking for a knife just to do some work with and not spend a lot of money, you can pick these up for $50, $60, and they're just work knives. They're just great knives for in a toolbox or to have in your truck or car or whatever. Love these knives. I have another 71, and this one is an SFO in natural canvas micarta. This was for Mike Latham of Collector Knives. If you can't tell, I like Collector Knives. I do a lot of shopping at Collector Knives. The spring's not quite as tight on this one. This is also part of the Farm and Field line. This is from this year's run, I believe. Yeah, this year's run, 2017. I've actually owned this knife at least twice. I sold it the first time. I've had red linen, burgundy linen, natural canvas twice, and I want to say one or two others. This is a pattern that is pretty popular, and you get a lot of good trade offers for it. So sometimes I end up trading them off or even selling them, if I get a good offer. But these are here to stay, at least for the moment. The 01 tool steel, I do have a couple of outstanding offers. I don't know that I'm going to sell it, but for the moment, I'm going to hold on to it. I'll leave it like that. Here we have a Charlie Campania 48. This is on the improved trapper frame. This is one of his Diamond series knives. There's a long, slender California clip, muskrat clip, however you want to call it. And like I said, this is a 48 pattern from this year. I have used this knife at work. Sometimes it's good to have a longer knife. I believe I had some chicken tenders or something one day, and there weren't any utensils, so I did have to use this to cut up the chicken tenders. So you can see here, this knife does have a little bit more patina on it. But great, long, slender knife, good in the hand, great slicer, thin blade. I really enjoy the jigging. This jig bone here is, I believe this is antique autumn as well. Or I might be wrong on that. Like I said, I didn't look these up. I should have looked them up before I started the video. But so I'm guessing here a little bit. Here, when we're going to get to a few of these, and I'll leave them all lined up like I usually do. This one here is a Hawthorne, Northfield's Hawthorne, and this is one of the first traditional knives that I had. I bought this off of a USN, Usual Suspect Network buddy, and he really doesn't like patina. He doesn't like the fact that the 1095 and the steel liners and bolsters will pick up patina and rust if you don't take care of them. So he found himself polishing the knife too much, and he ended up selling it to me for a good price. And you can see this is a good example of why I'm a big fan of the smooth white bone. You can see here how there's some inclusions in the bone, but this bone has started to turn a nice yellow color. And that's part of the aging process. As it gets older, it'll kind of get yellow and dingy. I kind of like that. Again, this is a Knife Ship Free exclusive. Northwoods, produced by Great Eastern Cutlery. The grind is a saber grind, and it is a more of a full clip blade here. Still slender, but it's more of a full clip than this long and more slender California clip. Next is, hold on a second, I've got my knives mixed up here. Next is this knife here. This is also in smooth white bone. This one is kind of special to me. This one is from Lone Star Knives, I believe was the name of the SFO holder or commissioner. This is a full-sized or full-sized clip point blade like on the Hawthorne, but I actually picked this knife up around the time that my grandmother was in the hospital right before she passed. So this knife kind of reminds me of some of the better times that I had with my grandmother. So this knife is a little bit special to me. I have one last Northfield's Hawthorne. I really wanted one of these when they came out. I didn't end up picking it up until a buddy of mine ended up having one for sale, and I picked it up there. Great knife. This is in red linen micarta. Again, that saber grind with the heat treat scale left on there. Long pull, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you can pinch these knives open. So I don't usually use that long pull. Also on 48 frame. So all of these knives here are 48 frame knives. My next knife is a knife that every time I post up, it seems like somebody's asking me, can they buy it? This knife here I was lucky enough to snag at a fair price, but at market price. And if you know what market price is on these, you know I paid a pretty good amount of money. This is red jig bone, if I'm not mistaken, or cranberry jig bone. It's a reddish tint. This is the 38 whittler with the clip point main, the sheep's foot secondary, and the pen blade secondary as well, tertiary, whatever you want to call it. It is also a true Splitback whittler, and you can see here that this is all steel. That the wedge here is not brass, it's steel. I'm a huge fan of these Splitback whittler knives. I have a small collection of them, so I'm really fond of this knife. Very popular knife, very sought after. like I said, every time I show this knife, somebody offers to buy it from me. I was foolish enough. I had one in Chechen rosewood, brand new. I found it. It was one of the last ones on the shelf. I had the knife for a while. At the time, I didn't appreciate the knife. I wasn't carrying the knife, so I sold it, and I immediately regretted it. So I had to track this one down. So when I saw it, even though it was full market price, or pretty close to full market price, I had to pick it up. This is one that'll be around with me for the long haul. Up next, I'm going to cover another series of several different knives in a pattern. This is the, and I'm sure I'm going to mess up their name, so I'm going to show it to you. This is the Mayer and Grosch $2 razor knife. This is on the 54 pattern. It's got a clip, full-size clip main on one end, and it's got a full-size spear on the other end. Half stops, very nice. Again, I can't remember if this is African blackwood or if it is ebony, but it's got the federal shield. Just a very classy knife, beefy knife. This is not something that someone who is weight sensitive or size sensitive is going to want to carry. Again, I wear extra large gloves, and you can see that this knife is even bigger than my hand, but great knife overall. I'll leave that here because I've got a couple more. This is my Carry 54. This is the DLT exclusive in burlap micarta. I have sharpened this knife. I've carried this knife. I've cut, you can see with that blue patina, I've cut a good bit of meat with this knife. Just a great overall knife, great for general purpose. Love that knife. This is my DLT 54 in smooth Appaloosa bone. This knife is a pretty nice knife. I have not carried it as much as I should. I really contemplated selling this knife, but I think I'm going to hold on to it for the meantime. Great knife. I just haven't gotten around to carrying it like I should. So those are my 3 54 pattern knives. This knife here is a knife that is made specifically for Smith & Sons. This is called the Mudbug. Basically, it is a GEC 21 frame knife, but in a lockback. This is my go-to around the house steak knife. You can see the patina there. Great knife, but a big knife. Again, I wear extra large gloves. And from this side of my hand to that side of my hand is 4 inches, pretty much exactly. So you can see this is not a small knife. Lockback design or backlock design, and just a great slim knife. You'll notice this is the smaller brother of that knife. These handles are pretty wide and fill out your hand very well. These are thinner, but because the knife itself is a little bit thicker, in this dimension, it still fills out your hand very nicely. Again, you couldn't go wrong with either one of these knives if you just want an all-out work knife. Great knives, great knives. This here is another true Splitback whittler. This one here, I got this one before I really kind of knew and understood all I needed to know about Splitback whittlers. You can see that center wedge likes to float a little bit, and this was a problem with this particular knife here. This is the 98 pattern Splitback whittler. Big clip point blade. Again, this is a pretty big knife. I mean, this is almost on the size of a novelty knife. If anything was bigger than this, me personally, I would almost consider it a novelty. But you got that big full-size clip blade. You've got the sheep's foot blade, half stops. You've got the pin blade also on half stops. Great knife, no rub, or very little if you press the blade into it, but if you lift it up straight, there's no rub. You can see how that big clip point blade comes all the way back between those tangs. I mean, this is just an amazing piece of work. This is in, I don't remember what Jig Bone this is, but this is Jigbone. Another knife, and I wish I would have bought another pattern in this knife, or another cover option in this pattern, but this is the 98 camp knife. This is GEC work at its finest. Full-size camp knife, again, very large knife. You can see here my 4-inch hand, extra large glove size hand. It has a large full-size clip with a half stop. It has a can opener, also on a half stop. There is a sheep's foot blade, also on a half stop, and an awl. And you can see the awl is very, very beefy, and this is also on a half stop. Smooth white bone. The bail is built into the knife. It did cause some wear, some rub there. That was a feature, how this knife operated, flaw, however you want to call it. But these knives now, I haven't seen the smooth white bone go up, but the Jig Bone versions, they go for $300 all day long. Great knife. This is just GEC putting on a clinic in how to make a traditional knife. You see how those tools fit in there just perfectly. Perfect spacing, no rubbing. Even if you do push up on the blade, I've not been able to get this knife to rub. Like I said, this is a knife that I wish I would have reserved more than just this one in smooth white bone. I'm not really a fan of this cloud bubble keyhole shield, but this smooth white bone, again, I'm a fan of it. And you can see just in the little bit of time I've had it, you can see the inclusions, but you can see how it's just taking on a nice yellow hue. Great knife. Very expensive if you go to buy one on secondary today. Also, this is a slip, and I think I've shown this before. This is a slip that my buddy Wolfman Zach 88 on Instagram made for me.